Hello, my name is Hugh Humphreys. I'm the Director of Artistic Planning at the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this short video which precedes the third MSO Connect concert for 2014 on Monday the 21st of July. In this video we're going to meet the conductor for the concert and also talk a little bit about the remarkable piece Smetana's M Vlast that is the whole programme for the performance. Our conductor this week is Jakub Hruša, who's the music director of the Prague Philharmonia and also the principal guest conductor of the Tokyo Metropolitan Symphony Orchestra. He made his debut with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra in 2011 and has been back with the orchestra every season since. His visits are always a real high point of our season. Jakub, Smetana's M Vlast was first performed in 1882, that's 132 years ago. It's actually even before the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra was founded. But yet our performances this week are the first ever performance that the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra has given of M Vlast complete. Can you think of why this might be?
Well, geographical distance, maybe, I don't know really, but I have to say that M Vlast is a piece which is always reserved for very, very special occasions. It's not a piece which is played just normally. And I think as soon as any organization creates that special occasion, as you have done just now, then it's very natural to bring it. And also, as soon as there's a natural connection between an institution and probably someone who is very close to the piece, at best Czech conductor, such as me, then another natural point comes into play.
And have you been the conductor who has introduced this work to an orchestra for the first time before?
Well, I'm not really sure, but I think so. There have been a couple of occasions at which I think it was, if not the very first time, then first time for the players who played it. And it's of course a fantastic sense of positive responsibility and great feeling of being ambassador of something which is pure quality. You know that it's a total quality and you're privileged to present it. It's wonderful.
And we're having this conversation before your first rehearsal. And when you come to an orchestra, do you like players to be steeped in the music that you're about to rehearse with them, or actually do you very much also appreciate that they're coming to pieces of music fresh without former interpretations in their minds?
Yeah, without formal interpretations is wonderful, but it's good if the musicians are educated and well aware of the background of that era of music, so to say. So, for instance, if they have played some Czech music, or if they played some Wagner, or if they played some Liszt, for instance, it helps, of course. Now I realize that I've done the piece once with the orchestra which really didn't play it and was also not so aware of the cultural background of that time. And there it was a little bit more difficult to explain what to do. So I think this blend you described, a little innocence, but also a background of knowledge, is something which is actually quite wonderful.
And you've talked about the responsibility of performing M Vlast. So what place does this work hold in the spectrum of Czech music?
Well, I think it's the most important symphonic piece which exists. Of course, from abroad, the perception is a little bit different. For instance, the New World Symphony, which I was privileged to do last time I was here, by Dvořák, is much more widely popular. But the M Vlast is a founding block of symphonic music in our country. And not only that, I think it's a completely unique example of such a cycle of symphonic poems in the whole literature of the whole world, in a way. There's no such undertaking before, and no such collection of independently important compositions which nevertheless hold so well together and make sense as one cycle. Actually, it comes to my mind, and it may connect these activities to your Mahler cycle, that actually Mahler was similarly successful in creating such huge blocks of music, which make sense separately. I mean, separate movements have certain sense per se, but together it makes even bigger sense. Although I have to say that you wouldn't play one movement of Mahler's symphony out of the cycle, but you can play one poem here.
You've talked about how these are 6 independent symphonic poems and are collected as M Vlast, My Country, by Smetana. What is the connection of the pieces, movement to movement? How does Smetana link them? And also, are there things that the audience should listen for as they take this journey through M Vlast?
Yeah, that is interesting. It helps if the audience knows a little bit about it, because it's a programmatic music after all. But it's such a type of music that is possible to be refreshed by, even if you don't know anything about it. So that's in the first place. And then there are purely musical links between certain movements. For instance, number 1 and 2, Vyšehrad and Vltava, have similar motivic material. Number 5 and 6 are totally monothematic. So there are 2 different movements or poems which can stay separately, but they are made from the same motivic material. And also there are links, various links actually, which intertwine movements to each other, and that is, for instance, that always the couple, like 1, 2, 5, 6, or 3, 4 for that matter, are occupying by the past of certain things about our country, and present, or past and future. And I would go into too much detail here, but it's clear, even if you don't go into it analytically, it's clear that the connection is there musically and programmatically.
This piece was written at a time when a lot of composers were exploring ideas of national identity in pieces, and this has the most public statement. It is called M Vlast. Do you feel Smetana was writing for his fellow countrymen to summon up a national spirit, or was he actually projecting his country to the world in this piece?
I think both, but probably the first thing you mentioned was his first aim. Of course, the globalization was not there at that time. So, of course, the primary concern of every artist was what was happening close to him in his closest circles. It was very natural in the age where no recordings existed and so on. But I think he was ambitious enough and self-confident enough by then, although completely deaf, we should mention, because he was, as Beethoven, one of those unfortunate people who had these personal tragedies, but despite of them he continued to work. So he was self-confident enough to expect that the result will be able to communicate with the whole world. But of course it's just speculation. Yeah. I think he really wanted to arouse the national musical feeling. He was not a nationalist in a black and white sense. I think he was aware of the world situation very much, and he was wonderfully educated in up-to-date modern German music made by Liszt and Wagner. But at the same time, because he took such an inspiration in the sources of folk music and in a way an immediate connection to what people used to sing in the countryside or urban life, I think he created something very genuinely communicative. And since the start, this piece was revered and loved by Czech people, and some of the movements immediately by the world as well, and some other which are maybe a little bit more specific. It took a little bit more time to present them to the world.
Just because we have you with us in the studio, and I'm sure in their exploration of these pieces, our audience will have heard numerous different pronunciations of the 6 movements. I think it would be wonderful actually if we have a native Czech speaker actually talk through the titles of each of the movements and what the title refers to.
Absolutely. You know, this is something which every kid in our country learns at the age of 10 at latest. So I know it for such a long time. Look, so M Vlast means my fatherland, basically, although it's often translated my country. But there's this emotional thing, fatherland, something which has almost family connection. And the first piece is called Vyšehrad, and that's simply a name of an ancient castle, which meant a lot in mythology and real history for the past of Czech nation. And it's actually in nowadays Prague, but it's not the Prague castle, it's another, in a way more connected with the past than the other one is. So that's Vyšehrad. The second one is called Vltava. And people in the world know it as the Moldau, which is simply a German translation. So I always suggest to try with the Czech original, which goes Vltava, and that's of course the river, which is the main inspiration, the river going through Prague. The third piece, with the most dramatic plot about the ancient terrorist woman, in a way, is called Šárka. And that's simply a name of that girl, which is the main protagonist of the story. Number 4 is the most complicated. It goes z českých luhů a hájů, and it literally means from Bohemian meadows and groves, although the more traditional translation is from Bohemian fields and woods, I think. But it's a little bit more poetic, as you see. And the last two are both connected with the Hussite part of the history of Czech lands, which is kind of pre-Protestant religious and military movement of the country, which had nevertheless national feeling, not only specifically religious. And these two names are the names of the places, of the localities. So one is Tábor, which is an artificially built town in South Bohemia, and the last is Blaník, and that is a place where, according to the mythology, the warriors whose purpose is to protect Czech nation are dwelling asleep, waiting for the most critical moment in the future to save their country. So in a way, that's a visionary end of the piece, which doesn't need to be translated so specifically, but which has a lot of meaning even in an abstract way.
Thank you very much for all the enlightening conversation about M Vlast. We look forward very much to welcoming you to Hamer Hall on Monday, and please also join us after the performance in the Stores foyer when Jakob and I will be talking a little bit further about Smetana's M Vlast.